Through the magic of videotape, we bring you some interesting interviews. First, we talk to Arthur Silber Jr., who's done a biography on Sammy Davis Jr. And we also talk to Howard Rosenberg, reprising his role as media critic.
From the News 4 Broadcast Center, here's Sam Shad.
We don't usually do entertainment on Nevada Newsmakers, but today's issue is a little different. There's a new book out called Sammy Davis Jr., Me and My Shadow, and it's written by Arthur Silber Jr., who joins us, and also Howard Rosenberg, who was an entertainment critic for many years here on TV, and was a good friend of Sammy Davis Jr.'s. Let's start out with you, Arthur. Sammy Davis Jr. was really a seminal figure in American entertainment. He really changed the face of entertainment, and especially in the Silver State. How did he do that?
Perseverance. Quick answer?
Yes. Nice TV soundbite.
Sammy's main drive was to be equal. A lot of people, all the stories about, yeah, he wanted to chase white women and all, he wanted to be white, all that's a bunch of baloney. I lived with the man. I grew up with the man since I was 16 years old. And my father was his manager. And we were best friends, buddies, and I worked with him for 22.5 years, so almost 23. So I know him inside out and backwards, from the early part of his life. When the drugs and all the rest of the stuff came in, I was not there.
Okay,
not that we didn't remain friends. We were friends.
But he was faced with a color barrier, wasn't he?
That's the one. That's what this book is really. I'm trying to explain to people what Sammy was really like and what he really wanted, and how he did break the color barrier for all black performers, especially in the nightclub field, because that time, nightclub business was the only business that was. This was a school that everybody went through. There were no comedy clubs then.
How would explain for the audience who may not know this what it was like to be a black entertainer in Nevada during the time period of the 50s?
You couldn't walk in the front door of the place that you were playing. You couldn't stay at the place you were playing. You stayed on the other side of town. You stayed in boarding houses. You stayed in small motels and hotels. Most of the black entertainers simply accepted it for what it was. Sam never did. Sam never accepted anything for what it was. Sam was all about, well, if they've always done it this way, let's try a new way and see if it won't work. Sam was an artist in the true sense of the word. He loved to play with possibilities, and he could do it for days. He taught me how to do an interview. He was shocked when I got up after an interview and said, "Where are the re-asks?" And I said, if I knew what they were, I would tell you. He said, "You sit down." And in an hour, he taught me how to do an interview, and I became a professional. And he would check me frequently to make sure I was doing it right.
Arthur, was there a difference between the onstage Sammy Davis Jr. and the offstage Sammy Davis Jr.?
From my viewpoint, yes. From everybody else's viewpoint, not very much, because he had the facade, you know. But when he wanted to let down his hair and all of that, that came to me. When he wanted to cry, that came to me, because I'm the only person he would allow in that deep, because of the friendship and both being very young when we started.
Howard, what made him mad?
Injustice, being misquoted,
Good answer.
being told that he couldn't do something that he wanted to do, seeing people that he loved hurting. Sam was the most generous individual in the world, not with money alone, and I'm sure he was generous with money, but with his time. When Sam was coming into town, you knew that you would get a phone call, and the party, usually at the end, when he would invite all the dancers from all the shows in town to come and just hang out with him for a couple of hours, and it was such fun. Tap, the movie, came out. He took over the Century Complex, invited the world to come and see his movie, and it was dynamite. We had more fun. There was a situation there that was marvelous. He wore a black leather jacket, and he couldn't get the zipper down. So he screamed, "Howard!" Because I was an old kindergarten teacher. I know how to do these things. I got the zipper halfway down. I said, "I don't know what to do now." He just went like this and shrugged it off his shoulders and stepped out of it. He said, "Thank you so much." And that was the end of that. That was Sam.
Arthur, were you with Sam at the time he met My Brett?
Oh, yes.
And they ultimately married.
Oh, yes.
And that was an interracial marriage. Was it against the law at that time?
Well,
in
some people's
states?
laws, not against the law for them. And Mine's quite a story. That book is the only book, and you see on the back of it, that has written about Sammy Davis Jr. that has ever endorsed. The only book. Yeah. Because I was there from the beginning. And next to my wife, I class her as probably the classiest woman I've ever met. She raised 3 black children up at Tahoe, all by herself. And the reason she divorced, because Sammy was never home, which I'm sure you know that. And Sammy wasn't a father type. He just never would be, never could be. But she raised those children, and today she lives very close to me where I live now, because she spent most of her time living at the lake. But she lives with me. We talk occasionally. She's still a very classy woman, very classy.
I just want to say that that Sammy Davis's wife is in the process of putting on a Broadway show that is being cast in New York, Chicago, and LA, which surprised me that they're not casting it in Las Vegas as well, where some of the greatest Sammy Davis impersonators are. There's also, this is one of several books that have just come out, but according to my source, which would be Professor Rosenberg, this is the best book, Sammy Davis Jr., Me and My Shadow, a biographical memoir by Arthur Silber Jr. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you very much for having me.
We'll be back on Nevada Newsmakers.